Serle's Masterwork is a new unique mace in 3.25, and this item can be acquired through shipping rewards when shipping goods to Ribbonfell, Pondium or Kalguur. Serle's Masterwork has the special property of being the only unique item that can be enchanted with Kalguuran runesmithing enchantments. This alone is not particularly special considering the stats on this unique mace, but Serle's Masterwork has a bit more going for it than just that, because it can also be enchanted with Kalguuran runesmithing enchantments as though it were any one-handed melee weapon. So it can be enchanted with one-handed sword, axe and mace enchantments, and also dagger and claw enchantments as well. Then on top of that, the item can be enchanted an additional 2 times, specifically with Kalguuran runesmithing enchantments, for a total of 3 runesmithing enchantments possible on this single one-handed weapon. Now we're talking. One important thing to note is that corrupting the item in an attempt to brick it to rare and keep the enchantments will not work. The item will lose 2 of the 3 enchantments because the rare cannot have more than 1 enchantment, as the 2 additional enchantments modifier would now be gone. So, as I just mentioned, this item isn't particularly interesting or strong in terms of the other stats that it provides. It has some strength and dexterity, some accuracy and a local increased physical damage roll with a large roll range. With a top roll on that modifier and 20% quality, the mace comes in at just 300 DPS, so not particularly good either as an attack-based weapon with its default stats. But Serle's Masterwork isn't supposed to be used as a default attack weapon, but rather as a way to combine some of the craziest runesmithing enchantments together to make some very broken interactions. So let's take a look at some of those very strong enchantments. In a previous video, I discussed the dagger enchantment, which makes socketed Vaal skills have 100% reduced soul gain prevention duration. This might be the most ridiculous enchantment of all of them, and I know a lot of people have been building around this one too, using things such as Hateforge and Chainbreaker in combination with Vaal Lightning Strike to be able to just spam Vaal Lightning Strike all over the place, to the point where there are so many projectiles that your PC is basically melting. Now, this enchantment also has a very strong combination that can be used with Serle's Masterwork, and it involves strength stacking using Replica Alberon's Warpath. This item will provide a bunch of flat added chaos damage for attacks based on how much strength you're able to obtain. But something which is very important to note here is the damage range for this particular added chaos damage. It's 1 to 80 per 80 strength, which is very similar to the kind of damage ranges you'll often see with flat added lightning damage. A very low minimum damage and a high maximum damage, and just like with typical lightning damage roll ranges, this added chaos damage from Replica Alberon's Warpath would gain incredible benefit from lucky damage, which would roll the hit damage twice, choosing the higher outcome. Enter the Kalguuran runesmithing enchantment for daggers. Chaos damage with hits is lucky. On average, this enchantment would provide about 32% more damage for a strength stacking build using Alberon's Warpath. That's pretty strong, and this can then be combined with the 100% reduced Vaal soul gain prevention modifier, and this is where this combination of enchantments really shines, because you're no longer using a dagger with the soul gain enchantment modifier, but a mace instead, so you're able to make use of other Vaal skills. And one of those really fun Vaal skills that becomes available as an option is Vaal Volcanic Fissure, a skill which automatically moves towards enemies and creates a fissure which spits out a bunch of projectiles. It then repeats that a bunch of times, snaking towards other enemies. Similar to Vaal Lightning Strike, this skill is just kind of ridiculous when you're able to spam it using the enchantment with Hateforge and Chainbreaker. That's a very powerful combination. And of course, you still have space for that third enchantment on the mace too. You could use this for the melee hits Fortify enchantment, that's a very good one. Then you don't need to use any kind of Fortify support or Fortify spec on the passive skill tree. There's also the Claw enchantment, enemies killed by your hits are destroyed, that one's very nice for corpse removal. And of course you always have basic enchantment options like local increased attack speed or increased critical strike chance, which are going to be very useful considering the weapon has neither of those stats. Alright, so what other fun enchantment combinations are there? Well, there's the one-handed axe enchantment to trigger a socketed fire spell on hit. And this one works very similarly to the Mjolnir modifier, only it's for fire spells instead of lightning spells. You could use this enchantment with the unique shield, the Squire, so that you can turn that triggered fire spell into a 6-link, and you could then enchant the mace with the Battlemage Claw enchantment. Battlemage adds the damage of your main hand weapon to your spells, so you could consider using Purifying Flame, which is a fizz to fire conversion spell. The flat physical damage on Serle's Masterwork would then be added directly to this spell, and you can obtain the rest of the fire conversion on the passive skill tree or on your gloves. And once again, there's plenty of useful options for that third enchantment, for example increased spell damage, or local increased physical damage to help improve the added Battlemage damage. And another enchantment you could look at for a different kind of build is the Sword enchantment for 5% of maximum mana added as fire damage to attacks with this weapon. This one is extremely strong in a mana stacking build when combined with the Axe enchantment for instant mana leech with weapon hits. And you could then use your third enchantment for the Vaal soul gain prevention shenanigans, or you could look at the enchantment for energy shield overleach from attacks. That's a really strong modifier too, and you can then make use of energy leech support. There's really just so many fun combinations, and I think the one thing holding back a lot of these creative combinations on Serle's Masterwork is just currency and how much investment you need to actually reach any of these build concepts. Because the enchantments alone cost a lot in terms of how many runes they eat up, and that's not including any of the other items you need in those builds like other signature uniques. One thing I will mention at the end of this video is other weapon enchantments such as Harvest or Heist enchants. I haven't looted Serle's Masterwork just yet, so I'm unable to confirm that this works, but just based on modifier interactions, you should be able to enchant this item with a Harvest or Heist enchantment and then a further 2 Kalguuran runesmithing enchantments on top for a total of 3 enchantments. But as I said before, I can't confirm that this works just yet. But overall, Serle's Masterwork is a very fun item. I think it's one of those items you might want to look at later on in the league when you have some currency saved up and you want to try out a new build. A fun build that probably won't be around next league, because this one does enable a bunch of weird stuff which you may never be able to do again. Thanks for watching this video, and thank you for your ongoing support. As always, stay tuned and stay safe.